Hello everyone. In this particular section, we are going to have two discussions. One is going to be with Dr. Chaitanya Sridhar, and the other discussion is going to be with Mr. Rajan. And both the discussions are extremely important because you will understand psychological strategies from a psychologist perspective, and also you will understand the players' strategies in terms of how to actually deal with retirement from the players' perspective.
Hello everyone. Hi Priyanka. Welcome.
Hello,
So today we're going to be having a discussion on retirement, okay? And the psychological aspects especially associated with retirement. People think sport is so much about performance. I think one of the things that we really need to also understand and look into is, preparing to retire, right?
Yeah.
And I'm guessing Priyanka has spoken I think if we could start with some of the what you saw in your own research, right, during your MPhil, what are some of the feelings, and what do athletes go through, especially in the build-up? Let's start from there.
Yeah. I think some of the things that athletes actually speak about or the feelings associated is about, of course, there is a feeling of sadness, there is a feeling of emptiness. What will I do without the sport?
Post, yeah.
Yeah, and apart from that, there is also, that anger that, something is taking me away from this particular sport, which I have really invest so much time in. And what am I supposed to do? I was so passionate about it, but
Yeah.
the goal that I had, the aim that I had is no longer there.
Right.
So yeah, and
Yeah.
that happened in some of the athletes. Some people who chose to retire by themselves, maybe they spoke about the fact that my career is done here. So basically, what next? Where can I invest my energies? What can I actually invest in terms of getting better in other aspects of life rather than just focusing on
Right.
Yeah.
So what I hear is that emptiness, no?
Yeah.
It's really and that's what it is. It's like, also what was coming to me, Priyanka, as you were talking was, the stages of grief, because what you were saying, denial, anger, acceptance, and then rebuilding. So it kind of, because it is, I mean, something that has been part of you for so long, right, is slowly actually coming to an end. And as much as we know it, I think it is difficult, right? It really is, like any retirement from anything. But I think especially with sport, and of course we're talking for sports because we are sports psychologists, is also the shelf life in sport is so small. It's very limited. So, and also it takes up so much of your time, energy, the process which goes into becoming an sports professional probably hasn't given much time to think of anything else.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that most of the athletes don't get in touch is with the grief.
Yeah, precisely.
Because you've spoken about grief, I feel that is one thing which is so essential. It's important for you to grieve the loss.
Yeah.
Right? Like for there to be renewal, I think it's so important to be in touch with yourself and be in touch with the fact that, that you're missing this particular thing.
Yeah. You make space and hold that grief, that sadness, that something is coming to an end. No matter how wonderful it's been, it's still going to be difficult. Or no matter, and especially where it's abrupt, right? It's sudden. I think that's even more challenging. And I think you're absolutely right. It's like, can you sit with your feelings rather than rushing to something else?
Yeah, because I mean, some of the athletes would want to distract themselves and think that, oh, big deal, I'm no longer with sport, let me just do something else. I'll do something more fun than sport. But then, you've invested your time in sport and you can't really just think about something else without really closing this chapter.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, so-
It's like how when we prepare the field, right? Like, so you first have to clear and then you sow, and then comes the harvest, and then again there's time given to heal.
Yeah,
I think it's very, very essential. And you know, something that I have seen, right, is athletes, players who've taken the time to go, okay, I'm actually coming to a close. I'm going to be, you know, retiring soon. And also, how do I want to invest my time next? I think they will probably cope a little better.
Yeah, absolutely. Like planning is one of the most important thing. In fact, I've also quoted saying that most of them did not plan.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the need to plan is so much higher. Like once they retired, a lot of people felt that there is a need to plan because you know what exactly you want to do. And I think accepting that the sport career will end, like the way you said that it's a short career, so it can end anytime.
Yeah.
And there are so many new people who are coming in, and their performance is also better probably.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you know, I think what you're saying, because I remember working with this young cricketer. He's obviously still playing. He's quite young, and you know, he was talking of, okay, you know, certain prize money which came from a tournament, and then I said, how are you going to invest it? And you know, and also again, it was, I think we had a lot of time during COVID, right, to like go into depth. And then I said, what do you want your life to be even post? And this is a very young cricketer who's doing well. It wasn't so much about your retirement as such, but I'm like, I want you to start pondering on it. You know, and it's very interesting because the next time he said, you know, ma'am, I actually want to invest it because I want to start a cafe, you know, later on. And I think, you know, Priyanka, I think that's very important because it's not just about thinking about retirement post as we come closer, but also knowing that, listen, you're probably going to be 35 maximum when you leave the sport. So it's good to start not obsessing and worrying, but to think about, okay, what next? You know, I you know, it's very important. And what you said about acceptance, and also I kind of feel like sometimes also accepting that this is actually not working. You know, I have this, want to give this example of this very, again, young cricketer who was going through injury after injury after injury. And you know how it is, it's a professional sport. You know, there are already, I mean, he was very good, but the point was there were youngsters coming in. And I remember one of the sessions he said, you know, ma'am, what do you think? And I said, listen, I can hold the mirror for you, but it has to be a decision that you take. But I also don't want you to be hasty in taking it. And also to start looking at, can I? And he was extremely smart. So I said, you need to start building, because his career was unfortunately cut short with injury, but he hadn't built his education either because there wasn't time. And then he was like, but you know, can I start now? So I was like, it's never late. So I'm like, you don't have to quit immediately, but I think to also start thinking of is, you know, so give yourselves, let's say, another 1 year, and if nothing's working, also then to take a call, and by then start building up, you know, your non-sport life as well, or non-sport career, you know.
Like I remember this one particular athlete, he knew that education has to be priority for him, and he also knew that, you know what, tennis is not really working for him like the way it has to.
Right.
So then he was like, you know, he really had to consciously make that decision. That, you know, for me the priority is this, and this can take a backseat.
Because if I think, you know, what we're saying is that if a player goes into denial, right, and you continue, you know, it's not about quitting immediately, but then there's just going to be a lot of frustration, and then there's no support, especially, let's say, you know, if you don't have a family support, or like, you know, some of them have the benefit of like falling back on a family business, but I don't think everyone has that. So I think it's really to sit and go, what's working and what's not working.
Absolutely. And I think having that courage to tell yourself is one of the most difficult things, because we think that somebody who was not performing well, it's easier for them to actually leave the sport, but I think it's equally tough for anybody.
You know, and I think, you know, one of the things is again, this was a young athlete who, you know, was injured. She came back, but then she just felt that, listen, I don't think this is working.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also, and you know how it is, right? When you come back into competition, it's really not going exactly your way. And so, Priyanka, with her, I said, okay, I want you to go start preparing that I'm going to start move out of this sport. We didn't use the word retirement as such. Maybe let's say in 6 months, and prepare yourself. See how is it to be a non-athlete, because especially for the very young ones, because also, right, I wasn't sure that was the right thing, but then it's not for me to
Yeah.
take that decision, right? So I said, and then slowly you come to terms with it.
Yeah.
And it was really tough, it's just so tough, because there's just, you have a routine, you have practice, you have college, and then suddenly you're like, what do I do?
Yeah, I think you're bringing such an important point in terms of athletic identity and retirement, right?
Right.
Because, like the way you said, their whole identity is revolved around being an athlete. I remember some of the athletes in my study also, they spoke about, how they had a separate identity because of being in sport. Everybody recognized them that, okay, this person, has won gold medal, this person has been doing so exceptionally well in sport. And suddenly that is no longer there. You're like every other person.
It's the image, right?
Yeah.
It actually also ties up to my PhD,
Yeah.
because image management and image concerns is something that we do see an integral part of sport, and especially when athletes are retiring. And let's say, you've performed at the elite level, you're known, you're used to also let's say that persona coming to terms with, I'm not going to have any of this. So to recognize that, listen, this is not the end of the world. This is one image of mine or one persona, and I'm also something else. Like, for example, Chaitanya is also just a normal human being, and I think, and that's let's dwell on that a little, Priyanka, because I kind of feel like, sometimes you also see ex-professionals, sports professionals, getting in really small controversies, commenting on everything, and kind of, drawing attention, but in a very negative way. Not like, this very constructive criticism. I'm not saying that. But like, you kind of see, and then it all makes me wonder, going, what's happening here? Yeah. And yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, again, I think what you're speaking about is also like, that image management is so necessary. And I'm also wondering about, are people grieving once that image is lost, and they want that image in some way?
It's a very interesting question, right? It's like almost like there's this one part of you, it's no more, right? And coming to terms with that,
and you've got an attention from that, right? And people have recognized you through a certain way because of your sporting excellence and the career you've had, and suddenly it's gone, and somewhere you've been in the media light. So
media light, the way you're treated, the way things move in your life, may not really be similar, may be the same.
I remember this one particular athlete who had reached the highest level, and then for him to make a transition into a life without having any media light was extremely tough.
Right.
And he was also grieving that loss, like, I really miss this, I don't have this attention anymore. Who am I? So I think that whole identity he had to really build around the fact that I'm a human being. I'm not just an athlete. I have so many other things. I have to develop new interests, new hobbies, new passions. So,
I think that was brilliant. Who am I? I think, even when we look at performance, right, we always say that don't attach yourself just to the result. Your worth is not dependent just on your performance. And then here, when we're talking of retirement, your athletic identity is probably taken a new turn. You will still be known for what you've done, and that's if you've really performed at that level. But also, there are going to be others coming in.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Absolutely.
I think that Who Am I was a brilliant way. And how many of them actually, you know, have even pondered on it. It can also be a very, what's the word? A beautiful space to actually really get to know yourself.
Yeah.
And you know, a metamorphosis into the next
Yeah.
level, where like if we take someone like Rahul Dravid, right, like, you know, great player, then it's like, you know, then he was still involved in coaching, and like, you know, now one of the best Indian coaches. I kind of feel his example is a beautiful way of how he handled retirement.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
and you're still contributing. I think that's one of the key, which is because I think what you're saying, and you know, as we're teasing this out, it's like, yes, image is one, but you were known because of your contribution.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then how can you continue to contribute?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. And a friend of mine, I think as you're speaking, a friend of mine, she had quoted once saying that, you know what, you have to be so comfortable with failing. So when you're actually leaving something, it also feels like, you know, you have to move out of it.
Yeah.
You know, that is, it's, so basically I think that is something that I'm coming to
Sitting
terms with. Yeah, because it was literally like, yeah, make peace with the fact that probably this is no longer there.
Yeah.
And it's okay for this to happen.
Well, yeah, so that's one side of the coin you're saying, no? When someone, let's say, has to quit because of
Yeah,
performance,
yeah.
and also, you know, I think also the corollary of that is also knowing when to call it quits.
Yeah,
Because sometimes
absolutely.
we see that, you know it's coming, but then if it's dragged, no, then from being on a high, just really tapers. And I think, you know, like, I know now a lot of associations actually have a conversation and dialogue, but I think it's also really a tough space. I want to give this example of this one of these, the wife of one of the elite players. So apparently he also knows he's close, and he wasn't coming to terms.
Okay.
So, you know, so she called out and said, listen, he's not ready,
Mm.
but you know, can I help in some way? So I said, you know, I wouldn't force a person when they're not ready to come for a session, but I said, as an support system, right, I think you can play a very vital role as well. What was the finding? You know, I'm sure they must have, I know I was involved in your project in a small
of
way,
course.
and
You guided.
no, but it was yours. So what about the role of support system, you
I
feel?
think it's so important to have that support network, you know, because I think that's something that we've told in every aspect,
Precisely.
right? Be it even with respect to performance or even with respect to retirement. I think that support system is so important because I think athletes have teammates as their important support system, and when they're no longer there, they have to really make new friends.
Yeah.
And building that
Yeah.
circle will
Yeah.
take time because
Yeah.
you won't connect to everybody the same way.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant point.
Yeah, and apart from that, it was also about, you know, the role family plays. I mean, how supportive they are.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
how sensitive are they towards the athletes who are actually leaving the sport.
Yeah.
So basically, I think
Yeah.
that is, you know, probably making an effort, giving space to the athlete, encouraging them to think about what next. Because your life doesn't end, you know, it's just a career in this particular area has ended.
Yeah.
So I think these things really made a lot of difference to people in terms of, you know, wife being supportive,
Yeah,
or you know, the parents being extremely supportive, and probably having some parents also spoke about how they had like tough conversation with their children and said that, you know what, this is not going anywhere.
Right.
So I think it's
Yeah.
important that you take a decision.
Yeah,
So-
especially if you know a child is suffering, and you know, either for no performance for a long time,
Yeah.
or you know, it's ended due to an injury.
Yeah.
I think it becomes very, very vital.
Yeah.
Like here, how this wife reached out.
Yeah.
You know, I think also what you were saying, what I was also pondering upon is, you know, something that we do in our sessions is I always ask players, please build your, you know, stay in touch with your close friends,
Yeah.
not just from the sport, but someone you've probably grown up with or built relation. Because what you were saying, like, you know, when you quit the sport, and then they're still performing, they're still there.
Yeah.
Not that they don't want to be, involved in your life, but sometimes the athlete may not reach out.
Yeah.
Like sometimes even when an athlete is injured and let's say it's Asian Games or one of the main, or even a tournament, they often say it's like, ma'am, it's so difficult, I should have been there, and it's just so heartbreaking. I think it's such a, like, even as we are having this conversation, Priyanka, I kind of feel like, it's such a tough conversation, but I think it's also so essential.
Yeah.
To also really hold this very sensitively, I feel.
Yeah.
And maybe, actually associations and coaches also, guide in this.
Yeah, I think unfortunately one of the things that I found in my study was like a lot of people that I reached out to, how I was actually struggling to actually
Yeah.
get participants for my study. And so many people that I reached out to, they did not even have contact numbers of people who had retired, like, in the past 2 years. They were like, we don't have. It was just one coach, I
Just
remember, he
disconnect,
had
yeah.
like so many
Wow,
numbers. He
thank
had all
God.
the athletes'
Yeah.
contact numbers. But it somewhere shows that we tend to forget people who are leaving the sport.
Yeah, exactly. I think you brought in a very, very essential. So maybe, like, following from what Priyanka's study was also to look
Yeah.
at it as, okay, what have they contributed in some way to make it momentous, and then guide them into what will be your second innings.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I think that would be really nice,
Yeah,
right? That
I
would
like
also
the term second innings.
I heard it from you itself. Yeah. I think, media brings in certain words, and some can really be strong. Like, I know a lot of the cricketers are like now with golf. Whether that's recreational golf or whether, they turn pro is one thing, but I kind of feel it's very essential to know how to channel the energy. And who knows, in the second innings what may happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, anything you'd want to add in this? It's your baby, your thesis. So,
No, I just feel that, in the end, I just want to say that it's so important for us to be so supportive towards people either being in sport or even wanting to leave sport. I
Precisely.
think we focus more on performance, but even when somebody is actually retiring, I think they require a lot of emotional support.
Yes.
So we really have to be sensitive towards
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And I think I'm also thankful we're actually having this discussion, because it's such a vital part, right?
Yeah.
Your player, how do you support? I always say is when the chips are down, or, when they're moving. I remember reaching out to one of, the players I'd worked with, and I'm like, he took the right decision and everything, and I still felt like, I'm like, I'm here, and you've really contributed. And he's like, thanks doc, this meant so much. So I think, really, really, being mindful of how we also say thank you and how we say goodbye,
Yeah.
than just saying, okay, you need to just put the boots down.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this was great. Thank you so much, Priyanka.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, welcome to this wonderful discussion with Mr. Rajan. Thank you so much, sir, for making time and coming. You already met
Thank you.
sir in the previous session with Ms. Nivedita, and in this particular session we are going to be talking about retirement. But before we move forward, I think I would really take this opportunity and privilege to introduce you all again to Mr. Rajan. So he has been the former international basketball player, and he was also, the former captain of the Indian basketball team. So privileged to have you and also
you.
have this amazing, insightful discussion with you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So first of all, because we are talking about retirement and it involves emotion, there's so much of intensity, there's passion towards sport. My first question to you is, why did you leave sport? What was your reason?
I feel any sportsman has got a lifespan, and it's good that, especially if you take my own example, I've been with the Indian team for about 15 years and been a regular member of the team day in and day out. And then when you're in your peak, you want to be in your peak for some years, and then you want to, especially I felt that I should leave the sport when I'm still good. It's not continuing to just go on and on and on and trying to push yourself over the limits. So I always felt that it's good to leave the sport where when you're in the high, and when people after that, when you leave the national team and then you go back to the state team, people should still remember, yes, he can be still called for the national duty. So that's how I thought about it, and I joined the Indian team as a young kid, like about 17, 18 years, and I was there for more than 15, 16 years with the Indian team continuously without missing a championship. So I said it should be a good retirement than just trying to pull on and trying to continue with the sport.
Absolutely. And building upon this, I just want to ask you that is it important to think of, leaving the sport or retiring from the sport for athletes?
Yes, it's very, very important to be prepared because you're used to the limelight, the kind of facility you get, the kind of fan following, the kind of coverage in the media, and when a good player plays well, you're covered well, and also the people look up to you. So it's a different ball game for more than 15 years, and you're used to that limelight. So much in advance, it's very, very important for a sportsman to think. Like a sportsman's life, if you look at many top international athletes, it's not more than 34, 35 at the highest level. So you have to start thinking by when you're in your late 20s and early 30s, what next after sport?
Right.
And if you think that I would keep on playing, it's not possible. So you have to retire at some point of time. So it's very, very important that you start getting mentally into that stage of accepting that at some point of time I should plan my retirement. So that becomes very easy. And how you plan your retirement, whether you want to have a big game and then retire. So you have to take the help of your very close family, your wife, your parents, your children, your coaches, like whom you feel that you're very well attached to them. You can talk to them and start discussing about your retirement plans, and then take it forward. And I think that every sportsman, it's very, very important to plan your retirement as you are in the peak of your career, so that you don't feel left out and you don't feel lonely after you retire.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've made certain important points here. One is, I think you've spoken about the fact that sport is short lived, right? A career in
Correct.
sport is short lived. So planning and thinking about leaving the sport, how you want to leave the sport, and what are you going to do after you leave the sport becomes extremely important. And I think you've also brought in an important point about having the support system, like for example talking to your wife, or and I think that is something that you did, right?
Yes.
Personally, when you had to leave the sport, you spoke to all the important people. And my question is, did you continue keeping in touch with the sport after leaving the sport?
Oh, sure. I think that every sportsman should continue in some way, Like after my sport, I still played for my club and for state for a couple of more years, 5-6 years. Then when I called it totally quits, I was still involved with the administration of sport. I am involved in administration of sport. Then I was involved in coaching young athletes, young players. I was involved with the selection of the Indian national team regularly, and also be a regular person who's following not only the Indian sport, the other good teams which are doing well internationally, and keep in touch with the sport.
Right. And I think this brings me to one of the question, like sometimes what happens is, because the pain of leaving the sport is so much, some people are so hurt that if they keep in touch with the sport, it's gonna hurt them more, so they want to completely avoid the sport. They wouldn't want to go back and train, or probably, let's say that if it's into basketball or badminton, they're like, I don't even want to see my racket.
No, that's true. It happens to many sportsmen because the problem is you have realistic goal and unrealistic goal. Suppose after certain time, you know that you want to be a national level player, a top player. Everybody works towards that. And it's only about 1 or 2% of the people who take up sport reach that highest level in the world.
Right.
It's not that there are lakhs of people taking up every sport, whether it's basketball, cricket, tennis, but everybody cannot reach that level. So you have to, as you gradually go, you have to accept what is your standard, how much you're improving, what are your chances. So if you look at all that, I think a person can understand that and be satisfied that I have taken a sport which has given me a lot of other inputs in life, which is very, very helpful. And it's not only playing at the national team. Sport teaches you a lot of things, so you can take that. But if you're not looking at that, then you feel disappointed, or sometimes somebody feels that I should have been selected with the club team or the IPL or the national team and things like that. And then you're disappointed saying that I'm not selected. You might not have been selected for various reasons, because sometimes the selectors feel that there is already a slot which is occupied, but you feel that you could have got. There are various factors. So if you're dejected and you leave a sport, then what happens is you don't want to get back into it, which happens. It's a human nature. It happens to some of the sportsmen. But I always advise people that irrespective of what you do, try to see a realistic goal and continue with the sport, because it teaches you a lot of things in life, and it also helps you lead a healthy and fit life.
Absolutely, and I think you've made an important point here, because a lot of people who do continue to keep in touch with the sport, be it being physically active or playing at a club level, or continue keeping in touch with the sport, I think also feel that connection is still there with the sport.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're very right. And some way or the other, you can be always connected with the sport. You can do various federations have their online programs for certification, and continue to contribute, because you have 20 years of very high experience, which you can give the next generation, and it will be useful for them.
Absolutely, sir. So I think you brought in an important point here, where you actually spoke about, sport skills can be also, translated to other areas of life. So, when athletes are leaving sport, so many of them think that, other than sport, I can't do anything else. So could you throw light on this aspect?
See, this is a very good question, and important for every athlete to think about life after sport. So in foreign countries, you have mentors. So you have certified mentors, you go back to them. So they are there to guide you. For example, they help you to analyze how you are good after the sport, like whether you like to continue as a coach, manager, you want to do a psychologist program, or you want to be certified as a fitness trainer, or you want to be a scouting person, or a certified coach. All these things, there are a lot of openings. Then there is a lot of courses which various colleges, which government has got both evening colleges, and then you have online programs. So you can do those certification, or you can do those higher courses and be ready to be market ready. And the most important thing is today, most of them whom you interact and you ask a big CEO or read his article, he says, if I have a few people in the interview who come for interview and with the qualification and experience, and if there is a person who's pursued sport at some level, competitive level, I would prefer the sportsman, because he has got a lot of qualities. Because in sports, you learn to take victory and defeat in your stride. It's a day in and day out. You're used to it. You don't get too attached. Then you're goal oriented. Because you want to achieve and you want to grow to higher level, you have to be a goal oriented person. Then you have dedication, because if you look at most of the sportsmen till they retire, they practice on an average 5 to 6 days a week, maybe 2 to 3 sessions a day, 6 hours of practice, day in and day out. And even sometimes when you're down, you're not too well, you work on the other areas. And then you also have commitment, and then you are passionate about the team. So in a corporate also it's important for team building, you know. So many of the corporates and many people look for sportsmen who are retired and who have the qualifications or who can up their skills and be qualified. So I'm sure that sports has taught a lot. And if you take my own example, I did my business administration, I did my personal administration, and I also did now the mentorship programs. So you upgrade your skills, and it helps in your corporate world.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, like, remembering what are the lessons that you've learned from the sport and translating that into
Your corporate life.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely. That's a very important thing to do. And so, one of my last question to you is, sometimes people are undecided about leaving the sport, and then they probably don't know how to actually communicate it to the parent or the coach about it. What do you think can be helpful, or what did you do for that matter?
Retirement from any sport is a tough decision, especially for top athletes who have been there for more than 15, 20 years in a sport. And there is another factor. There are children who have not reached the goal, and they have done in college a sport, and now they want to retire from it, or because they would have had a goal to be a top player and work towards it, but then they have to take the counselor's help or the help of the coaches and tell the parent that now I'm finishing my college, but I have not reached the stage of what I was looking at. So I would continue with the sport in some way, playing for a club, but at the same time I would get myself a corporate ready, do the next higher education and not concentrate full time on a sport, but I will still continue with the sport because it helps you. Then
Yeah.
there are the top athletes. The top athletes, you really need to because you're used to it for 15, 20 years, the kind of limelight, the kind of daily practice, you're used to a routine. So once you're used to the routine, you miss it because
Absolutely, yeah.
you're not going to follow the routine, you're not going to see that kind of the people watching you on action and all that. So you need to work for this for about 1 to 2 years, much before that, thinking that how you want to retire. First you think about it, think how long you want to continue, and then slowly confide with very close family people. Then there'll be some coach who's been maybe a childhood coach, or a coach or somebody who's very close friends whom you have their help when you're growing, and you have confidence in them. So talk to them slowly about retirement, how to think. So you'll get a lot of inputs on that. Talk to some senior players who have retired gracefully, how it is to take retirement. So you have to take the help about a year or two before and get all those inputs and take the best out of it. And then when you start thinking about it, it makes it more easier than abruptly somebody says they don't need you anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're trying to prolong your career by playing and thinking that I'm still what I was in my peak. I'm still good. Your thought process is like that, and then if you're not selected, you lose heart. Instead of that, try to prepare at a certain stage. Be a realistic. So if you take the help of very close family people who are your well-wishers, you're very close. There'll be some bonding coaches whom you have worked with, and I think they are the best people who will guide you and help you to make it a smooth transition from sport to the life after sport.
Right. And I think I know that I've already asked you, like, I had one last question, but as you were talking, I just had this thought in my mind that how is life actually after retiring from sport?
If you take it positive, it's very, very nice. Initially, for a year or two, it's quite tough because you're used to the daily routine of whatever time you get up in the morning for your training. Then you miss many of those good friends around, the bonding, your team bonding, your national team bonding, all these things you miss. But then everything has a phase in life. It's from school, you miss your friends, you go to college, you miss your friends, then you work, you work for 40, 50 years, 60 years, you retire, then you look for. So you have to find ways to enjoy it and say, yes, I have done my bit and worked hard and played. Now I have to look the next phase. So how I can try to be in the sport, either helping young budding players or try to get into a state team, national team, coaches, managers, whatever you like to do in the sport, be attached with the sport or be an administrator. So that will not take away all that missing, the missing link will not be there. You will feel happy that you're in the sport.
Yeah, I think you've brought in such important points wherein you've spoken about there are feelings around it, but you also need to learn to manage and navigate through it.
That's right.
Right?
You're very.
Yeah.
It's a touchy feeling because you miss all that after being there for such a long time. Even if you play at the highest level of club, if somebody is not even a national player, but he's played for a club level for more than 15 years at the highest level, day in and day out, he misses all that because you have totally a different committed lifestyle to be at that level. It's not easy. So you miss all that, but then you have to accept the next phase and go ahead and look forward for it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. I think it was so insightful and there was a lot of learning and you've shared your personal experiences. I think it was a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much for taking time and talking to us about it.
Thank you. It's a pleasure always for anything for sport.
Yeah, thank you.